Hello, it's Thursday and welcome to Youth Force Daily. I'm Austin joining in from Kenya. Today is the fourth day of AIDS 2020 virtual and the conference has been incredible. Today we have interviews from around the world to connect you with other young people involved in the fight against HIV. First, I'm joined by Aron, who brings us insight into today's global village.
I'm Aron, here with an update on the Global Village highlights of the day, Indigenous youth, realities and resilience around the globe. They may be from different parts of the world, but they have something in common. They are disproportionately affected by HIV. These young activists use storytelling to focus on being resilient in the face of stigma. Speaking of resilience, we have stories of resilience, an experience based on sharing very personal stories by adolescents and youth living with HIV. These are just some of the highlights today. Be sure to check them out and share your favorite moments using the hashtag AIDS2020virtual. Ask questions or just chat at the Youth Cafe.
Thanks, Aron. Now with me is Gareth Jones, HIV Social Support Manager in the National Health Service and Vice Chair of the PAC. Hi Gareth, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Can you give a little introduction to yourself and your organization?
Yeah, of course. So I'll do a bit about the Pact, which is my main sort of involvement with youth civil society, particularly in the HIV response. So the Pact is a global coalition of more than 80 youth-led or youth-serving organizations working within the global AIDS response. We were founded 7 or 8 years ago now in response to a very obvious need for youth input within the global AIDS response. And we are currently just coming out of the end of our previous 5-year strategic plan and coming into the new one, which is sort of coinciding with the last 10 years leading up to our goal to end AIDS by 2030.
Why the need for Youth Force?
So obviously, I'm sure everyone is sort of familiar with the figures that globally AIDS is the second leading cause of death amongst young people, and young people make up 25% of people living with HIV globally. So there's a clear sort of need for consideration of the situation that young people find themselves in. And what we have young people, I mean, we're talking 13, 14, 15 up to 24 going on 30. You know, we as young people, we go through a tremendous amount of change in this time period, in this period of our lives, change and self-discovery. And if we're brutally honest with ourselves, it's probably a time where we're more likely to take risks. You know, we're experimenting, we're trying new things. We've got sort of a newfound freedom for a lot of us. And I think from my point of view and in my experience, it's both personally and professionally, it's futile to sort of try and prohibit young people from partaking in risky behaviors. It's futile to prohibit young people from trying new things. It's just not going to work. So what we need to do is need to focus on a harm reduction approach. And I think that way you can have a real positive impact on young people's health. But it's not enough for a bunch of older people, you know, no offense to the older people working within HIV and AIDS, but it's not good enough to have them sat in office thinking, what do young people nowadays need? What do young people nowadays want? It's got to be informed by us. Young people, we're experts by our own experience. We know what we want. We know what works for us. So it just makes sense for us to be consulted within any sort of response, particularly in a pandemic that has been ongoing for 30 years and where we are disproportionately affected by it.
What is needed for the whole plan to work?
Of course, I think one of the main things we really need is accountability to young people. Very often, I'm sure this is the experience for young members of civil society organizations globally, is that we're all very often seen as tokenistic. And I think it's gotten better throughout the years, but there's still sort of a long way to go until we are taken seriously and taken as experts. So, for example, at the Pact, we created the Uproot Agenda. And as part of that agenda, we created a scorecard system for measuring the youth friendliness of national HIV programs and policies. And from those results so far, which we are very close to publishing, countries have not been performing very well. Young people don't perceive services as accessible. Young people don't perceive services as friendly to them. We are doing our best to put together policies and processes that we can start holding our national governments, our national health services to account. on providing youth-friendly services. And my main point on that is, and as I'm probably going to keep banging on about throughout this, is go to young people, ask them what they want.
So how can your goals be achieved?
We just need to start engaging people in more than one way. As I mentioned, we don't want to be preaching to the choir. We really want to be engaging everyone. So every type of civil society organization out there that's focused on young people, let's try and engage them. Let's see what they think. Those of us that aren't totally comfortable or aren't totally familiar speaking about sexual and reproductive health, what works for them as well. So I think those are some really important points that we could be following and that we could be working on. And yeah, I think that's where I am at the moment.
Well, thank you very much, Gareth.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really interesting, and it's great to see that there's so many young people actively engaged in this.
My next guest is Martin from the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, or ILGA, an international federation of more than 1,800 organizations. Hello, Martin.
Hi there. Hi, Austin. Hi.
Can you give a little introduction to yourself and your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Martin Karadzhov, he, him pronouns, and I'm the chair of the youth committee at ILGA World. The youth committee is made up of 6 queer youth LGBTI activists from 6 different continents, and they're all democratically elected. So yeah, we work to amplify LGBTI youth voices within the LGBTI movement, but also on regional and international level, particularly at the UN as well.
Talking about UN, what are some examples of your work?
Since the beginning, so the youth committee was established, it was established last year. And for the 1 year that we've been running, we've managed to create regional consultations in different regions across the world with LGBTI youth activists in person to ensure that LGBTI youth issues in those regions are heard, but also to make sure that they're involved in decision making in those regions within the LGBTI movement, but also within their stakeholders in their countries. And I think another example of what we've done during this year as well is we've attended many conferences where we've again amplified the youth LGBTI issues that exist, particularly at the Nairobi Summit on the International Conference on Population Development, where we brought LGBTI youth issues for the first time in 25 years and advocating that they can't be sidelined anymore. And the only way moving forward is for us to really mainstream those issues as part of the program of action on the ICPD plus 25 as well, follow up.
How can our viewers join or support your organization?
So there's loads of ways you can support. You can reach out to us. You can drop us an email. You can partner with us. You can, provide additional capacity as we're all volunteers as well. But yeah, provide space and opportunities that we can collaborate together to ensure that we can bring more visibility to LGBTI youth issues as well.
Can you tell us about any challenges you've experienced as a youth-led organization?
Yeah, I think particularly for us, one of the big challenges that LGBTI youth issues are often considered as too controversial, too sensitive, too political to be addressed on international level. So even organizations within our movement often don't speak about them, and they are sidelined on the side, and they're not addressed really on important topics. So that's a really big barrier for us when we talk about LGBTI youth issues, is that there are not enough advocates out there to speak about them, and they're often invisible. And also the other one is being youth-led, and being completely voluntary-led is capacity, which we have to do on top of our studies or jobs or anything else that we have to. So it's always an additional challenge that we have to face, providing, particularly in the current context of COVID-19, where we are facing even more further marginalization and being pushed LGBTI youth issues in the shadows as well.
Speaking of which, what will support you to overcome these challenges?
Well, for us, I think is if you're a stakeholder, if you're someone involved in decision making, is providing that space and support and funding for queer youth activists across the world. They're doing incredible work, but often don't have that support to come together and be more actively involved in the decision making platforms. It's really important. And if you are also working in another movement, such as HIV/AIDS movement or SRHR movement, it's always to think about more of all of our work more intersectionally to ensure that we include LGBTI youth issues within our work and raise awareness about how those issues intersect.
Well, thank you, Martins, so much for joining us.
Thank you as well. Thank you for having me.
I can't believe there are over 1,800 member organizations under the ILGA umbrella spread all over the world. Speaking of global endeavors, Alicia is the Youth Program Coordinator at UNAIDS. Alicia, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Austin. How are you?
What does UNAIDS do?
UNAIDS is the joint UN program on HIV/AIDS. And what we basically do is we coordinate the work of 11 agencies, 11 UN agencies that work together to end AIDS by 2030.
What does the term resilience means to you?
To me, resilience is the power of people to overcome obstacles and also to adapt to changes, to obtain good outcomes. In this specific case, I think resilience will be an example of how people living with HIV have overcome all the obstacles and reach out space of visibility as AIDS is still an issue to overcome, to achieve sustainable development.
What is UNAIDS doing to support youth leadership and civic engagement in the HIV response?
Yeah, UNAIDS believe in the power of young people as agents of change. So we engage with young people not only as beneficiaries, but also as partners and leaders of the HIV response. So investment in young people leadership skills are necessary to ensure that they are supported to transform all their energy, motivation, and creativity into meaningful contributions for the HIV response. And the UNAIDS youth program is part of the community mobilization, social justice, and inclusion department at UNAIDS. So for us, the support to community-led responses is critical, not only to UNAIDS, but also for the AIDS response in general. One of the main lessons learned that we have after almost 40 years of HIV response is that without activism and without community engagement, it's impossible to end the AIDS epidemic.
Alicia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Looking into the future of HIV response from a youth perspective, we now turn our page to Bangladesh, where we find Rokonol Rabbi. Rokonol is not only a program officer at SERAC Bangladesh, but also an activist who works in a non-profit youth-led organization. Hi, Rokonol. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, hello. Thank you for inviting me to join the conversation.
Rokonol, you're welcome. So I just wanted to ask you, can you give us a little introduction to yourself and your involvement in the local HIV response?
Well, in Bangladesh, I'm working as a youth activist since last 7 years, and my key focus on my working with youth and their sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also HIV/AIDS engagement. So through my working, I saw that there are a lot of initiative from the local government and they have actually doing a lot, but because in Bangladesh, if you see the data, the prevalent HIV prevalence rate in Bangladesh is very low. In a comparison with total population, it's only 0.01% of the HIV positive. So we're not very not at, but our position is good. But right now the local government, they are implementing the fourth strategic plan on HIV/AIDS, and they're taking many initiatives. Since I also add on with this that there are very lackings on HIV screening facilities, and especially the treatment and care for people living with HIV.
Okay, how involved are people living with HIV in your regional HIV response?
Oh, well, for regional response is very good because in South Asia we are engaged with some South Asian lead organizations like APCOM, and I'm a member of Youth Voices Count. So from the regional perspective in South Asia, our response, our engagement is very good, and we are almost connected with each others, and implementing the several projects at the local level in connecting with the regional perspective.
Okay, talking about migration, are governments acknowledging key population and shaping the HIV response for their needs?
Well, we are still lag behind of the recognizing of key populations because as a Bangladesh is a Muslim country and very conservative societies. So yeah, especially young people who are living with HIV, they are stigmatized and taboos, and the other key populations, especially female sex workers, male sex workers, and other men who have sex with men, and LGBTIQ people, they are still leave behind, and there are still we are raising our voices to include them, engage them with the projects, and we are fighting for that.
Can you tell us about the prevention policies in your region? Are people informed about PEP, PrEP, and U is equals U?
Well, yeah. In our region, yeah, there is a initiative for PEP, PrEP, and U is equal to U. That is the undetectable is equal to untransmissible. So yeah, through the regional process, is we are aware of this, but at the local level, actually in our country, we are not using the PrEP, or we are not yet introducing PrEP at the community level. But through the regional process, I also engaged with the workshop and different engagement on PrEP, and also we are aware that the new innovations of the PEP, PrEP, and other EU is to continue. Yep.
Okay, moving forward or backward, what are some of the ways in which organizations can promote resilience among youth?
The resilience, actually, young peoples and resilience both are that youth are the power, and young peoples can play the key role in fighting HIV. So but if I am comparing, and if I am saying that youth for resilience, that is much more in a positive way, that using the young power to fight the HIV and the resilience power of the young people, the positiveness and the stability among young peoples to ensure to fight this deadly virus, and also to the society. So for the part of the engaging young people, resilience is a big thing, and we need to assure young people's perspective and young people's initiative through the resilience lens.
Okay, and before we wind up, what are 3 HIV myths in your community that you could wish to debunk?
There are a lot of misconceptions, and there are a lot of way backs and myths on HIV in my community. Especially people hear the things that if you have a friendly friendship, and if you touch or if you kiss someone who have positive, then you also get the virus. And secondly, many people, in fact, through the social media, there are another myth is spreading that through the fruits, some people is spreading HIV by injecting positive blood in the fruits, and it will go spread among other people who ate the fruit. So that's the second. And third one is the HIV itself is a myth, because in a country like Bangladesh, as a developing country, and where people are almost in a fair, so whoever have HIV, they are already they actually leave them alone. In fact, husband leave wife, or wife left husband. If anyone get HIV, and the society from there actually left out from the society. It's only for their myths and misconception of about the HIV virus.
Okay, thank you very much, Rokonol, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Austin, for inviting me for the interview.
Thank you for watching. Come back tomorrow for another Youth Post Daily. Be sure to join the conversation online at the Youth Cafe.